Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Arisa, for this opportunity to talk about the kind of work that we do at Monk Prayogshala. So, just a brief introduction to what Monk Prayogshala is. It's a research organization based in Mumbai. We do a lot of research in the area of social sciences. The department that I work in, which is the psychology department, we do a lot of work. Initially, it was a lot of work in the area of creativity, specifically dark creativity, which I'll briefly talk about. But now it has moved to creativity, misinformation, moral decision making, and like a nexus of all of these things. So yes, this is just a little something, or like a soft launch of the kind of work that we do at Monk Prayogshala. So yes, who is a creative person really? What comes to mind when you think about, or when I say envision a creative person? Do you have any examples of who a creative person is? Someone who is studious? Curious, okay. Free-spirited? Someone who likes to create? Someone who's able to imagine. These are lovely examples, yes. Expressive. You're using qualities. Can you think of a person? Has their own style, okay. Can you think of a person? When you think of creative individual, can you think of a person? Sorry? An artist, okay. Great. Rukmani Akka, who's a dancer. Kohinoor, who's a researcher and a dancer. So, a lot of people, when they think of a creative person, they generally think about these individuals, usually. A scientist, an artist, a musician, a dancer, usually. But a lot of times, a creative person is not someone who is an artist or has done really groundbreaking, dramatic things in life. Sometimes a creative person is just a mom who's trying to do something very jugadu at home to try and make something nice for the kids, or try and maybe, so this is an example that I'd like to give. My mom. It's just a small, silly example, but what she did was, or I was very intrigued by what she had done. We didn't have a soap stand in the kitchen for the hand soap that we have. So what she did was, she used the detergent jar that we got, empty detergent jar. She cut it in a manner that looked like a soap stand. Somehow she mounted it on the wall, and now the soap is in that detergent jar that she cut out to look like a soap stand. So a creative person is sometimes just an ordinary individual who thinks of ingenious ways to do things. Now, this is a really interesting example that I came across, or this concept of horizontal parenting. Horizontal parenting is essentially a tired parent who wants to parent but is also tired. So this example is from a video that I saw where the wife made like a racetrack on her husband's t-shirt so that he could lie down and sleep and nap, and the kids can play with the cars on his t-shirt. So this is an interesting example. Another one I saw was a Jugaad solar cooker, which was crafted from a car tube, and a glass panel is put on it just to cook something in it, because the car tube gets really hot, so then the thing can cook in it. I don't know how safe that is, but it's still creative. So most creativity looks like figuring something out, adjusting, improvising, basically making life a little easier. Okay, it's something that's groundbreaking like how a scientist does. And what I try to propose here is creativity actually is not a singular trait. It exists on a spectrum. It can range from something small, like, oh, I fixed this at home, to something that's really big. I changed the world. I changed the world, how the world thinks about a certain thing. Okay, at one end, it could be like the example that I gave you. At home, you're doing something at home, or a child figuring a concept out by themselves through a creative way of maybe memorizing it. And on the other end, you may change an entire field, okay? Most of us are somewhere closer to the first. Yes? Now, the reason why I bring this up is creativity does have a genius bias. What does that mean? Most people think that to be a creative individual, a person needs to be genius. So not many value everyday creativity as much as genius level creativity. So this is an example from a work that we did on we had this question whether creativity has genius bias. So what we did in this study was, we used popular paintings by artists, and we also used paintings made by children. And we wanted to understand whether individuals implicitly categorize these famous paintings as more creative than paintings made by children. And this is what we found. Individuals were implicitly more faster than categorizing these paintings as genius, or not genius, as creative, than these paintings. So this ties to the 4C model of creativity. I don't know how many of you are maybe familiar with that model. The 4C model of creativity breaks creativity down in 4 levels, which is the mini C, little c, pro C creativity, and big C. So on one end, it is these everyday examples of creativity, and on the other, the big C creativity are these large genius examples of creativity. But a lot of us often focus on the big C creativity and categorize those as creative examples of what a person can do, and not necessarily pay that much attention, or would categorize these little C creativities as creative, or as creative as the big ones. Okay? So yeah, this is just an example from that study. So yeah, this is just the brief results from that study that we did. If you would like to read more, you can scan. I added a QR code if you want to read that preprint. So people consistently associated creativity as big C and mini C as mundane. And this is what the genius bias is, a tendency to treat genius-level creativity as the true standard. Now, why does this matter? If creativity is always seen as genius, everyday creativity becomes invisible. And in addition to genius bias, another bias that we often see in creativity is the art bias. The art bias is you thinking creativity only in terms of artistic expressions, like paintings, a dance form, or just these visual arts, movies maybe, but you don't necessarily look at scientists in the same manner or call them the same creative as an artist would be. Unfortunately, I could not put that other paper here, but if someone is interested in reading that, we also published an article on, so it's titled, Who is the Creative of Them All?, where we looked at people's implicit associations or implicit beliefs about what is a creative profession. And we gave them a category, we gave them various professions that they had to rate in terms of how creative they are. And we saw consistently people rating artistic occupations as more creative, but business and science-related occupations as not as creative. So this brings me to the next part of what creativity is, or who a creative individual is. And I think I had this conversation yesterday over dinner with some people. Is creativity always positive? And the answer is not really. Creativity is defined as originality and usefulness, but usefulness depends on the person's goals and intentions. The same creative process can lead to very different outcomes depending on what your goal is, or what your intention is, or how morally flexible you are. This raises an important question about the nature of creativity. Okay, so the idea is that creativity is not necessarily inherently good. The goodness or badness is added by the intentions of the individual, which brings us to dark creativity and the kind of work that we largely do at Monk Prayogshala and in the lab that we work in. So what is dark creativity? It is creativity used for self-serving goals. Oftentimes, dark creativity involves a good amount of deception, lying, or deceiving somebody. And sometimes, on the other end of dark creativity lies malevolent creativity, which often results in harmful outcomes. For example, I think we spoke about this over dinner yesterday. We were looking at serial killers, the ingenious ways in which they plan to kill their victim, their prey, and I mean that results in them getting murdered, but the act is actually very creative. It could look like creating convincing excuses. On the small examples of dark creativity could be you just using a white lie to get out of a situation, or it could be students thinking of creative ways to cheat on an exam, manipulating people's situations so that they serve you, self-serving goals, basically, generating believable but false narratives, etc. So before I talk a little more about dark creativity, this is a model of creativity proposed by Kapoor and Kaufman that talks about how creativity is amoral. It does not have any morality. Creativity itself is morally neutral. It is not inherently good or bad. And amoral is actually an acronym for antecedents. So what it talks about is creativity follows these things, or creativity comes from these things. One, that is antecedents. What are the motivators driving you to do something creative? Okay? M stands for mechanisms. What are your personal characteristics, your creative self-efficacy, your ability to carry out that act? O refers to operants, your environment. Can you do that you're thinking about? Can you realize the idea that you have in the given environment? R refers to the realization, the actualization of the act itself. And A and L refer to after effects and legacy, which is the immediate consequences and the long-term implications of what you have done. Okay? So the amoral model talks about creativity lying on this scale, which ranges from noble, doing something good for the world, or not necessarily the world, just doing something good creatively. And on the other end lies the evil creativity, which is malevolent. And in between you have these neutral creativity, self-interested, sinful, and then evil. Okay? The difference between sinful and evil, I think, broadly would mean evil is a deliberate harm to somebody, either it is physical harm or emotional harm, and sinful would just be, it's just bad to do something. It won't necessarily cause them physical or emotional harm, but it's just something that's wrong. Okay? Creativity expands what is possible. It does not determine what is right. The same ability can lead to very different outcomes depending on what your intentions are. So everyday nature of dark creativity could be like I gave you the example of children cheating on an exam, you lying. It generally occurs in low stakes environment. It is often subtle rather than extreme. And it exists on a spectrum from harmless to harmful. Sometimes your lies could eventually cause a greater harm, but you may think that it was just a small lie that you said. Big dark creativity, I don't know if you can see the image. This is Inventing Anna. I don't know how many of you have seen that show. So Anna Delvey created this persona, Anna Delvey. She called herself the German heiress, and then she scammed a lot of hotels, committed a lot of frauds, got a lot of money, and then eventually I think got caught. Sorry. And this is Saul Goodman, my favorite character from Better Call Saul. In my opinion, Better Call Saul is a better show than Breaking Bad, but I may get a lot of, I don't know, this is a little controversial opinion, but in my opinion, Better Call Saul was a better show than Breaking Bad. But in Better Call Saul, the reason I'm saying this is Better Call Saul showed Saul Goodman as this creative genius who, in his dark ways and morally flexible ways, committed a lot of, I wouldn't say crimes, but like got his clients out of something where, in situations where those clients were actually, guilty for what they did. So yeah, big dark creative examples could look like designing large-scale financial scams, creating sophisticated propaganda systems. Even this example of digital arrest, I don't know how many of you have heard of it. Even that is something that's super darkly creative, where how creatively, first of all, the concept of digital arrest and how believable they made it seem. I think a very famous social influencer, what's his name? Ankush Bahuguna, I don't know how many of you know. He's a very famous social influencer. He got scammed, and he actually believed that he was in a digital arrest. So something like this could be considered as an example of dark creativity. So creative individuals are more likely to think of deceptive ideas. They are often better at constructing and justifying their deception in creative ways. And if you have lower moral concern, that is, you don't care morally what happens, good or bad, you are more likely to indulge in dark creative means to get something. Darkly creative means to do something. Moral tendencies, your moral tendencies shape when people deceive and how they construct this deception. Okay, this is just a small little activity that I want to do with you. This is a scenario. Think that your best friend is getting married. You are in town, but you do not want to attend. What are some of the excuses that you can think of to give to your friend that sound believable? Don't give me something that, oh, I was sick, or I can't come, I'm sick. That's a very basic excuse. Think of something. I'd love to hear some examples. We are at Arisa's unconference, sorry, can't come, really sorry. Any other examples? Or any other excuses that you can think of that sound believable? Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Great. I have this last minute client who has this deadline that they want to reach. Sorry, can't do. We had some examples. Now, these are some examples from the study that we created, where we conducted, where these are some real examples. This is not something that I made up. This is something that our participants gave us. Some very, very interesting excuses. Now, we manipulated this two ways. One, where we would ask participants to think of ethical ways that they would get out of a situation. And the other instruction involved, what are some of the unethical ways? So the unethical ways involved a lot of different things. One of them was giving laxatives to the bride and groom so that just the wedding is called off entirely. So yeah, this is just what we get when we prime people to think in that manner. So who is a creative person here, really? I'd like to just end this conversation thinking that a creative person is, there is no single creative person. Creativity is who you are, not, it is what you do, but it is also about the intention and what is the goal that you are eventually trying to realize. So yeah, that is who a creative person is, really. Thank you so much for listening.